Happy Thursday, everybody. It is April 11th, 2024. The Gamecocks have wrapped up practice number 10 of the spring. And of course, too, if you're from the state of South Carolina, you live in this area, I've learned that if you have some type of Masters gear during Masters Weekend, you got to show it off. So we have the Masters gear going on. We got the Masters up above our head as well. Maybe we'll give you guys some Masters updates in there as well as a little bonus treat. But nonetheless, Gamecocks practice number 10, as I mentioned. They were inside today because of the concerns to the weather, at least earlier this morning. Fortunately, it didn't seem like it was that bad when they were out there. That was around 9:30. We were able to observe the first six practices, first six periods. Actually, they were able to stay for that seventh period, just weren't able to film. During that period, there was a lot of 11 on 11. I'll get into that in a little bit. Not that there was anything crazy, but we'll talk about some of the things that we took away from the practice. And in addition to that, we also had a chance to listen to a pair of coaches speak today, assistant coaches who spoke for the first time this spring. That was, it was Shawn Elliott, run game coordinator / tight end coach, as well as special teams coordinator Joe DeCamillis. So we'll hear from those two. Those videos were just uploaded. That's why we're starting a little bit later today in comparison to starting at 2 o'clock like we typically do, because we want to be able to have that audio for you guys today. Before we get into things, though, see some of the comments we got here. Travis Edwards says, "What's up, GC Live family?" What's going on, Travis? Nate Dogg says, "What's up?" Give us some updates from the scrimmage, something other than what Beamer said. All right, we'll get into that, Nate. I got you. Oscar Attaway Jr. Hi, guys. Actually, how about this? In addition to hearing from Joe DeCamillis and Shawn Elliott, who spoke today, we'll also play some sound from the players who spoke yesterday, because one of those players, Oscar Attaway III. So we'll listen to your son. Had some good stuff to say yesterday, as well as some of the other players that spoke. William Jones says, "Sun's out now in Spartanburg, South Carolina." Love that. Love that. And I love that if anyone is heading out towards Augusta this weekend. I know it's something that is near and dear to many people who live around here, how much they look forward to the Masters. So enjoy it this weekend. I had the chance to go 2 years ago with my then 93-year-old grandfather. He's 95 now, and it was a very special moment. So enjoy it if you have a chance to go out there. No question about that. Let's see. Just watch some of the coaches' interviews. Great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun listening. Tell you what, there's one soundbite in particular that I asked Shawn Elliott a question, and I might lead off with it just because it was just that good of a soundbite. And when you think about this era of college football, when you think about the transfer portal, NIL, are you worried about a player entering the portal if you're too tough on him? And listening to some coaches, I'm not specifically saying about South Carolina, but listening to some coaches throughout college, not just football, but college athletics as a whole, there's a sense that some coaches are starting to change their approach a little bit, simply because they're afraid that, oh boy, if I'm too tough on a player, he might hit the portal. Shawn Elliott, is it going to surprise anyone when I say this? It was the complete opposite. In the way that I phrased the question to him, I brought up the fact that I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, and the head basketball coach of UConn, Dan Hurley, was talking about this. And he actually feels like in this era, it's actually allowed him to coach players even tougher, because he's like, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but some of these guys are getting paid a lot of money. So if you want to be able to have that perk, if you want to be able to have all the additional perks that come with playing Division I athletics, then you have to understand that when you sign up to play for me, this is what comes with it. You're going to get coached hard. So we'll listen to what Shawn Elliott had to say, because it was good stuff as well. William Dean says, "What's up? What's up, William Dean?" BRC Gamecock. Who's your Masters pick, Mike? Well, I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm doing better, at least with my Masters pool, in comparison to where we were at this point a year ago. I think two of my picks from a year ago, they withdrew on the first day. So one of those guys within the freaking first hour or two. So we're off to a better start. But my tier 1 pick was Scheffler. So we'll see what happens. Not a sexy pick. I think a lot of people in the pool that I'm in, and I'm sure a lot of people who are doing Masters pools, a lot of picks for Scheffler. But we'll see. We'll see what he's got. But knock on wood, doing well right now, but still very, very early. Oscar Attaway Jr. says, good. I saw him today. Good to hear that. Good to hear that. Kevin Miller says, need some offensive weapons or 4 wins is max. Very scary with the schedule. We'll get into that a little bit, Kevin. Some of your thoughts. What up, killer? Lance Playa joining us today. All right. Having said that, let's get into some of the press conference, and then we'll get into some observations from practice today, because I think the big thing is this. When we talk about spring practice, especially with what the media is able to see, there's not a lot, to me at least, that we're able to take away as far as, oh my God, like that's earth-shattering news. Now, there are some additional thoughts that Wes and Chris had that they shared. I think Wes actually did today. Some thoughts that he had. So we're all looking at different things. It's kind of like, honestly, like a coaching staff, right? You know, you have a defensive back coach or a defensive coordinator. He's paying attention to what's going on with the defense. You know, like offensive coordinator, he's paying attention to what the offense, special teams coordinator's paying attention to that. So we're all doing different things when we were there today. I think it was me, Jack Veltri, and Wes were there today. So Wes did some breakdown. So we'll get into some of Wes's thoughts. And if you want to see the full piece on it, you can head on over to Gamecock Central. If you're not a subscriber, sign up today. Just $1 for the first month of your subscription to Gamecock Central. And when you sign up for GC, you also are able to look at the other fan sites on On3. So there's plenty of SEC schools. Georgia's in there as well. Maybe you want to take a peek over the fence to see what's going on in the world of other schools, you know, from a recruiting standpoint. What's going on over there? Is there a player that South Carolina is interested in and they're in the hunt for? But there's another school out there, not just the SEC. There's ACC schools out there as well. So having said all that, let's get into a little bit of what Shawn Elliott had to say today. I'm trying to set this one up for you. So we lead off with a bang with what Shawn Elliott had to say about his coaching style and making sure that he's not going to change. Let's cue it all on up. Here we go. Shawn Elliott today. And we'll jump around a little bit. I want to play this one soundbite in particular, and then we'll go, we'll have some, thoughts on it, share some thoughts, and then we'll keep moving along. Yes, a little bit more.
I'm a pedal to the floor kind of guy. I've always used the term, especially when this transfer portal kind of got going, is never let a player hold you hostage. So I wasn't going to change my coaching style because I may hurt their feelings, and they may say, "Oh, coaches, he chews my ass every day, so I'm going to leave." If that's the case, then he didn't need to be there in the first place. So that's the way I see it. And I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to hold my tongue back. I don't care what player it is or how good they think they are or how good they actually are. If they're doing something wrong, they need to be reprimanded for. And sometimes that's a little bit tough. Sometimes it's a little embarrassing, and that's for coaches as well. But if I were to change, I would need to get out of this business. I would need to go and, I don't know, become a librarian or something, because that's just not who I am.
I want to ask you about Mike Smith. I know obviously he's not here with y'all right now, but yeah. What are your thoughts about what y'all are going to be getting when he gets in June?
Are you kidding me? A multi-dimensional tight end that can go play on the perimeter inside. He's got talents. He's a big-time ball player. Really excited about having him getting up here as soon as possible, getting in the mix, because he's real similar to Simon. Can do a lot of those things out there, away from the line of scrimmage, where I say a little bit more width and playing in space. But he's going to be a talented guy. And when he gets in here, he'll probably be in the mix right away. That's just how I view him.
All right, so let's pause that for a minute, and we'll come back and pick it up on the other side. I just love that. I absolutely just love hearing Shawn Elliott share that, because, again, when we think about this new era that we're in, and it's still brand new, right? I mean, there's still going to be some learning on both sides, both from players, both from coaches as well. But when we think about the idea of, okay, man, you can't coach them the same way. I mean, God, if you're too tough on it, man, if you make them run an extra lap, they might hit the transfer portal. as you heard from Shawn Elliott right off the bat, he's not going to let a player or even a player or two or three, he's not going to let them hold him hostage from the style in which he wants to coach. And certainly when Shane Beamer hired Shawn to come here, he didn't hire him to be a carbon copy of what we all know him to be. He brought him in here to bring that fieriness to him, to bring that toughness. Players are going to understand that. Now, there might be some players on this roster, and I'm not saying this is the case, but there could be some players in that tight end room or players on the roster that have to deal with Shawn in some shape, way, or form, with his other duty being a run game coordinator. If they don't like that, then okay, might not be the place for you to be. But I don't think that will be the case, number one. But number two, over time, especially with Coach Elliott going out there hitting the recruiting trails, I think players are going to look at it and say, you know what, I want to play for a guy like that. That's why I am coming to South Carolina. I want to get coached up by a guy like Shawn Elliott. So for him to say that, I think it's important. I think it's important, especially when we think about recruiting today. I think back, I mean, it's been like this for a long time. Shoot, I think back to when I was getting recruited out of high school, and I can only imagine at this level, but there's a notion that there's a lot of used car salesmen when it comes to coaches in their recruiting pitches, and you can read BS. I think now more than ever, players can read the BS. So for a guy like Shawn Elliott to be just upfront, hey, you sign up, I'm not going to necessarily coddle you. You come here, it's going to be that tough love. That's not to say that he's not going to be in your corner, because certainly I think everyone understands that he would be and that he will be. But he's not going to put the kitty gloves on when he coaches you. So, again, really appreciated just the honesty from Coach Elliott. Let's look at some of the comments here. Lance Player, I'm just so happy Shawn Elliott is back. As a coach, I take a lot. Oh, as a volunteer coach. Lance Player's a volunteer coach. As a volunteer coach, I take a lot of what he does and instill it in young people. I like that, Lance. Thanks for sharing that. William Jones says, Lance Player. William Dean, that's good, Elliott. BRC Gamecock says, I'd love to play for a coach like Shawn. Always held accountable. And I think that's the big thing too, right? You think about this world of NIL and transfer portal, and I don't want to seem like the old guy, like, get off my lawn. But, I mean, that's the other part of it that gets lost. That the majority of these players at South Carolina, never mind just throughout college football, but just focusing on USC players right now, the majority of those guys are not going to go play professionally. Even if they do, the average lifespan of a player in the NFL is only 3 years. So at some point, accountability is going to play a big role in your life. And if you're able to play professionally, if you're able to play football at any level professionally, now it doesn't even have to be the NFL, it could be the Canadian Football League. Accountability is important. Accountability is important now. But that's the other part of it. And I think when we look back to a couple months ago when it was announced that Shawn Elliott was going to return and be an assistant coach at South Carolina, I remember reaching out to a handful of former players. Shoot, I think it was nearly a dozen, to be quite honest with you. And we're talking about some of the biggest names in Gamecock history, especially during an era in which USC saw some of its best football around that 2010, 2012 period. And hearing from players like the Connor Shaws of the world, like the Marcus Lattimores, like the Ace Sanders, like the Mike Matulises, hearing from players, the Pat DeMarcos, hearing from players that had a chance to play for Shawn, they understood what he was going to bring to the table day in and day out. And if you weren't going to be able to match his energy and, to use your word, accountability, he was going to be accountable. If he wasn't bringing his A game, he demanded you to hold him accountable. But as we know, there's very, very few days that will ever happen, if ever. So I'm glad you used that word. William Jones says, Beamer, done good. Bringing Shawn Elliott back, no question. Seth, hey, how are y'all doing? William Dean, welcome to football. Damn right, William. EXO Make says the right kind of kids will get all the benefits from Coach Elliott. No question about it. Craig Hanna says, glad Coach Elliott is back. We need more like him. I agree. Zachary says, agreed. Guys are guys, and getting paid, accountability, which should be a priority. Coven Hunter, that's what it's all about. No question. No question about it. So let's go back, listen to a little bit more from Coach Elliott today. Then we'll pause again, shift on over, listen to a little bit of special teams coordinator Joe DeCamillis, and we'll also share some thoughts from what we were able to observe today, as well as some additional thoughts going back to this past weekend. And we'll also try to get some sound bites in there from players who spoke yesterday, including Oscar Adaway III, who had a chance to meet with the media yesterday. We also had some good stuff from Juwan Howell. We also caught up with John Kilgore, spoke, having a chance to be able to play with his brother, what that's been like. So we'll try to get to some players as well. But let's keep this rolling. A little bit more of Shawn Elliott from today.
Camden High was in here to view practice day. Was that on your invitation? They just come in?
No, they do an annual event and bring the entire team that the ones that work hard over there and do the right things. They bring the team over here to see a practice every year. It's been a tradition now, I think, for about 6 or 7 years from what I understand. They continue to do a lot of that stuff. We got a Camden guy here on the team. So he practiced a little bit harder. Camden coach over here, so I could maybe coach a little bit harder, but it's good to see those guys out.
Sure. And then, as you title as run game coordinator, I know you work with tight ends a lot, but how much do you actually work with the O-line in that role as run game coordinator, and how do you bounce ideas off of Dowell when you're coming up with a plan for the year?
Yeah, so, my interaction with the offensive line is more through the walkthroughs, and as we put in schemes right there, I'm here to just kind of use my knowledge to tell them how I see this thing works, how I see it working with the tight ends and the offensive line and the backs. And I got to take all those puzzle pieces and kind of put it together so they all understand, what happens at this point, why we have a kick out block here, why you follow a second puller on a pin and pull, and just things of that. But specific work as far as in a team segment or individual combo drills with the offensive line, I'm not doing a lot of that. I got to coach these tight ends and make them the best group out there. And that's my number one concern. So, it's a balance. But I do sit in there with Lonnie and Dow, and we bounce things off each other and try to formulate a good plan and get it done.
Shawn, earlier this spring, I don't know if it was Josh, maybe there's a couple other players. They talked about this tight end room in particular, talking about from an identity standpoint, which obviously we have months to go until we get to the season, but being more physical this year. What has that process been like? This, again, I know it's so early on. Is that something that you want to see from this room? What can we kind of expect the South Carolina tight end room to look like this season?
Well, just from my standpoint, anybody that I coach, I want them to be fighters. I want them to be tough. With no back down. And what we've done in that room this spring, and just what are we on practice 11 maybe? What is it? I'm not sure. 10 or 11. I don't even know. They have gotten more physical. And when you think of the physical nature, that can be on the perimeter and blocking for screens. That could be lining up inside in a split flow zone concept, backside kicking out a big defensive end that's crashing down. I try to tell these guys they got to put their face in the fan each and every rep. And to kind of describe that's kind of taking the fan right there and just letting it just blister you, and that's the mentality I want these guys to have. I want them to play with no fear, a face in the fan mentality where there's no back down. They understand what's coming at them. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical, but that's what they live for. I was in the meeting yesterday, and we had a little shoulder bruise because we did a great job on a split flow cut block. Coming down the line, and then he was like, yeah, my shoulder's sore. I was like, well, God, that's what football's based upon, I was like, you shouldn't even play the game if you're not. We know what we're getting into. We're getting into this to be physical. We're going to have bumps. We're going to have bruises. We're going to be sore. We're going to ache. We're going to hurt. And you got to play through all that. But you got to be fearless. And I said, listen, my shoulder hurts, but I'm going to go out there and do it. And they're going to do it. And we've done a good job, I think, in establishing more of a physical mentality in that room.
All right. There you go. A little bit of Shawn Elliott today. Cam Johnson asks, Michael Smith on campus yet? Not yet, Cam. Not yet. There'll be a couple like Matthew Fuller, Solomon, a defensive back. He won't be on campus until fall camp. And I say fall camp, I mean, these guys will be getting here towards the end of May, but I say summer, fall camp. That's what I mean by that. Let's throw this back up there. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit of what you would expect from Shawn Elliott. And we talked about it before with just his intensity, what he expects, and what he expects that room to ultimately look like. And when you think of who Shawn Elliott is, really, the way he wants his players to play, it's an extension of who he is and his personality. So I expect that room to be extremely physical. Now, obviously, when you look at this running back room right now, with some of the injuries, and some of the injuries we knew already heading into the spring, like a guy like Rocket Sanders. But then you think about, okay, Juju McDowell re-aggravates his collarbone, so he's going to shut it down for the rest of the spring. Bradley Dunn tweaked his ankle, nothing serious, but just trying to be smart, holding him out. Matthew Fuller not here yet, so there's one less scholarship running back currently in that room. But if that running back room can be what this coaching staff believes it can be with the talented additions they've been able to add, on top of the fact of who you're returning, we were watching DJ Braswell today moving around, then this is a team that not only is going to depend on having a push up front from their offensive line, but also being able to get help on the perimeter from their wide receivers and tight ends and stock blocking, or if the tight end is attached to the line and having to down block a little bit. So that physicality is going to be crucial to not just that room, but I truly believe the identity of what this offense will ultimately try to look like. And I say try because you need to be able to do it consistently. And as we know in the SEC, it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do when you have to go up against some of the best defensive lines in the country week in and week out. You're going to have to be physical, yes, but you're going to have to just be able to execute. I don't care how big you are. You got to just find a way to get done. And it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, yeah, I think we truly won't know. We truly won't know until at least we see them against Old Dominion week 1 and have a better idea of what the offensive line will look like, number one, but how the running back room is flowing. Who's your starter? Who's your number 2? Are you getting consistency? Are you getting a drop-off from that 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 in that running back room, or are they pretty close and you kind of get that 1-2 punch that South Carolina is looking for? I'm not going to BS you guys. I'm not going to blow smoke up your backsides and tell you, oh, yeah, everything's great. We won't know. We won't know until week 1. We'll maybe have a better idea once we get into fall camp. Certainly once we see a guy like Rocket Sanders move around, see how a guy like Oscar Attaway continues to progress in this program, DJ Braswell, Juju once he comes back, throw in Howell as well. But I think it's just way too early to have a feel for it the way that we'd be able to look at it and be like, oh, yeah, that's definitely. But I feel like that's what they would like to do. Whether or not they're able to do it, that's a different story. Take a look at some of the comments here as we continue to move along. Martin says the goal this season is to defeat the Missouri Tigers. It's crazy to think, right? And give Missouri credit. Give Missouri credit for what they've been able to do. Had a hell of a year last year. Cam Johnson. I like Smith's tape a lot. I do too. When talking about Michael Smith, the tight end. What stands out to me about Michael Smith, and I remember doing a video breakdown on his commitment. This is way back, feels like forever ago, to be honest with you. But what stands out to me about Michael Smith is that he's big, he has speed, but he's also very physical. He can make an impact as a pass catcher, but he can also make an impact in the run game. And when you think about the addition of Shawn Elliott, yes, he's going to want guys that can be pass catchers. Of course. But at the same time, too, he's going to want to be able to develop physical tight ends, guys that can go out there and make an impact in the run game, guys that can go out there and, again, not just make an impact when they're attached to the line of scrimmage and having a down block, but also on the perimeter and being able to spring some of those long runs so you get those explosive runs. Trying to find the exact note that I had on Michael Smith. This is what I wrote back during National Signing Day. Michael Smith, a big body tight end. Smith signs with South Carolina, listed at 6'4", 245 pounds. Considered the consensus, and some of these numbers may have changed since then. Consensus number 10 tight end of the nation. Shane Beamer and tight ends coach Jody Wright didn't waste any time with Smith. In fact, USC was the first to offer the Georgia native, which, as we've said many times before, with other signees, that loyalty from day one played a big role in the prospect choosing the Gamecocks. A versatile tight end who was flashed as a pass catcher, Smith also demonstrated the ability to be a promising blocker. Choose South Carolina over schools like Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Texas. So giving people a refresher if they needed one on Michael Smith. But I think he can be very special when it's all said and done during his time at South Carolina. Very eager and excited to see him get on campus. But as we've said before, with a lot of other tight ends, freshmen, that it's okay to simmer some of these expectations, simmer down. Yes, there will be outliers when it comes to freshmen being able to come here and being able to make a difference from day one. But not everyone needs to be able to do that. Not everyone will be able to do that. And I think with Michael Smith not having the ability to go through a spring ball, it's not to say that he's not good, but when you think about, okay, you have 4 games that you can play in and still be able to preserve your red shirt, when you just talk about that right now and you look at it at face value, would anyone be upset just looking at it? Again, face value as of right now, as of today, if Michael Smith redshirted, no, I think a lot of people would look at it and be like, all right, great. He has an opportunity to go through a winter workout, be able to get bigger, faster, stronger, then go through spring and really be able to hone in on his skills, because spring, more than anything, is just the giant bye week. It's just over a month long, though. That's the difference. In the season, when you have a bye week, you're really able to focus on yourself. When you're in the season, and granted, South Carolina will have an additional bye week this year with the tweaks going on in college football, the college football playoff expanding. Each team will have 2 byes this year. So, yes, you do have an additional bye week, but even in the season, once you get to that Thursday mark, typically towards the end of the week, you're starting to already turn the page and looking ahead to whoever you're playing that following week coming out of the bye. So I think it's extremely beneficial to be able to get that. So that's not just Michael Smith, that's anyone. I really like what they have in that room right now, though, starting with Josh Simon. And I think, too, with Brady Hunt coming along, I think they're going to be able to do some good things, not just as receiving tight ends, but also as guys that can make an impact in blocking. And to give you guys a little look at what went into practice today and what we saw in the limited time that we were there was a lot of 2 tight end sets. And that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me simply because there's a lot of questions still in that wide receiver room. Questions that we'll have a better idea of once we get into fall camp. But if you have questions in that wide receiver room, and you feel like you have guys that can make an impact both as pass catchers and in the blocking game in that tight end room, then why not take advantage of that? But on top of it, what that also tells me is they're still trying to figure out from a comfortability standpoint for their quarterback, going to have either a guy that wasn't with the program a year ago, most likely, either Robbie Ashford, or a guy who only appeared in 4 games and redshirted last year in Lenore Sellers. And I think we've all talked about this before. You know, my opinion on it, I think Sellers will be your week 1 starter. But out of respect to Robbie, I'll just throw that in there that they're continuing to compete. But trying to help those guys out from a blocking standpoint, especially as this offensive line continues to figure out who those 5 starting guys are, and they build a rapport with each other. Big Red says, does the lineman that left really hurt with all the depth we have now? No, Big Red, I wouldn't say so. He did appear in 2 games last year, but I think more than anything, a lot of that had to do with the fact that South Carolina, with their offensive line, it was like musical chairs. They needed to do anything they could to be able to stay afloat, roll with the punches. And as we saw at times with the offensive line, that wasn't easy just because of the injuries that were piling up. Injuries that went back with Jalen Nichols getting hurt in the spring game at left tackle. And then you lose your starting right tackle that first game. I think it was actually the first series or 2 with Case and Henry. And at that point, I mean, shoot, it's a crapshoot. And you're trying to do whatever you can to continue to make adjustments on the fly. Martin says, I'm listening at the gym with Coach Elliott. Please don't yell at me. I'm working hard. It was funny when he was mentioning the fact, when Shawn Elliott mentioned, he's like, I don't know. If I can't be myself, I guess I'll go do something else. Maybe I'll be a librarian. Someone tweeted at me saying that'd be a good way to make sure no one talks loud in the library. You have Coach Elliott go up in your face and say, keep it down. I don't think it'll happen again. Cam Johnson, need to find a big-bodied wideout or 2 in the portal. That's the other thing, Cam. I'm glad you brought this up. It's April 11th. We are just 4 days away from the transfer portal opening up that second window, that spring window of portal season. The spring portal window will stay open from April 15th through April 30th. So you get 15 days. And as Shane Beamer alluded to on Tuesday, he's not against the idea of going out there and bringing someone in if they feel like it will, number 1, be a good fit from a culture standpoint, but number 2, they feel like that player or players can impact the team in a positive manner. Now, we did this the other day on Talking Tuesday, but for those of you who may have missed it, right now, when you look at South Carolina's roster scholarship limit, South Carolina is exactly on the dot with 85 scholarships for this upcoming fall. So players like Matthew Fuller, players that aren't here yet, it takes into account them being here in the fall. So they're at 85. As I've said before in the past, and I've made this comparison to the NFL with salary cap. Up north, a lot of the reporters mention this phrase: the cap is crap. It's basically just saying that you can, maneuver and things can fluctuate to make the salary cap work the way that you need to. I bring that up because while it's not exactly the same by any means, it's similar in the sense that when I talk about, okay, South Carolina needs to get to that 85 mark if they're a scholarship over, 2 over, 3 over at this time of the year, not to worry about it, because you can also make some adjustments. So I say that because just because they're at the 85 mark right now, if they were to go out in the next couple weeks, bring in a player or 2, whether that be an experienced wide receiver, whether it be what I think could be a possibility, an experienced cornerback, if they are over that mark, don't get all worried about it. Those things tend to take care of itself. They always figure it. everything will be okay. Everything will work out. So just because they're at that mark, don't think, oh, well, they're at that 85 mark. That means they're not going to go out. No, that doesn't mean that. That doesn't mean that. Big Red says, will we have anybody playing this season who didn't go through spring practice? Well, if you're talking from a injured standpoint, I mean, we'll have Rocket Sanders, right? There could be some players who aren't here yet. And I don't want to make any assumptions by it, but you look at some of the freshmen that are coming in. You look at the last couple of years, especially in that defensive back room, safety position. Last couple of years, there have been guys who've come in who have made, I mean, think about DQ Smith. DQ Smith didn't go through spring ball, and he came here, and he was an All-American, for crying out loud. So there could be Big Red. There could be. It's tough to say, though. As I mentioned before, when it comes to freshmen, I try to. I look, maybe it's. I don't want to say like it's a pessimistic view of it. It's just trying not to get ahead of ourselves here. This isn't a video game. Just because you have a talented guy, had 4 stars, 5 stars next to his name, you shouldn't just automatically assume, okay, he's going to be a day one guy and he's going to turn into an absolute stud. He could, but it's SEC football. It's not like they're making the jump from high school up to whatever. I don't want to take any shots at any other divisions or conferences. William Jones says the defense is outpacing the offense right now, which is normal. Beamer mentioned it on Tuesday. I can tell you that's not just coach talk. If anyone has ever played the game, whether it be at the high school level, college, I mean, I think back to my college days, the defense was always ahead of the offense at this time of the year. And a lot of that has to do with the fact, especially now, when you think of, okay, not only the early enrollees coming in, but the transfer portal players, from an offensive standpoint, it's going to be a little bit more complex. And I'm not saying to my fellow defensive brothers out there that we are idiots by any means. Maybe I am. But defensively, it's a little bit easier to get caught up to speed as far as what you have to do. The terminology, offensively and defensively, sure, things are going to be different. But it's a little bit more complex sometimes from an offensive standpoint in trying to learn some of that terminology. Let's see. Oscar Attaway Jr., you are so right, Jones. Talking about Williams Jones. EXO says, really excited about Oscar and Jawan. Hardworking, tough kids. They will ball out. Very excited to see both those players. Should be good. Crowd Cutter says the run defense improved significantly last year, going from 115th in yards per carry allowed to 44th. O-line doesn't have it easy in practice. No question about that. Let's see what else we have. Garden Black says, I hear a lot of comments about the size of our wide receivers, but let's not dismiss that we have some athletic tight ends that can create mismatches with smaller DBs and linebackers, Josh Simon, Connor Cox. Yep. That's kind of what we were talking about a little while ago. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to it, Garden Black, but I agree with you. And I think that's why we could also see a lot of 2 tight end sets this year, just like we saw today. BRC Gamecock says, I think Jalewis Solomon will be one to watch. So that's one of those players that we mentioned who's not on campus yet. He'll be arriving in the fall. And again, I say fall, summer, whatever you want to say. He's not going to be here practicing until fall camp in August. But I think about a player like Solomon in just how athletic he is. He's a freak athlete. Played both ways in high school. Want to make sure I get the updated one. Okay, so he's the number 11th rated athlete for his class, for the class of 2024. And I think with him, more than anything, when I watched his highlight reel, he's a ball hawk. Anytime the ball was up in the air, whether it be just him making an undercut or players just tipping the ball and him just being in the right place at the right time, he found ways to just get the ball. He was a ball hawk. Now, when I bring this comparison up, I'm not saying this is the way he plays, but as far as ball hawking ability, it reminded me a lot of like Ed Reed, right? Balls up in the air. He was always there, always there. This past season, he had 8 interceptions. 8 interceptions. Think about that in one season. 8 interceptions. But on top of that, what I like about him is he's not just one of those, okay, you know, and get my interceptions, pretty boy defensive back. No, he friggin' hits. He's a hard-hitting defensive back. Hard-hitting defensive back, which makes me wonder. Certainly, South Carolina has questions as far as depth is concerned in the cornerback room. But a guy like him, could he learn that slot position? That nickel spot going up against slot receivers? Now, I think Jalen Kilgore is going to do a phenomenal job there. And I think they're going to, also rotate guys in there like David Spalding. Hopefully he can stay healthy this season. Listening to him yesterday, you can just tell this kid's just hungry. He's hungry just to stay healthy and make an impact and wants just to help the team more than anything. But that's a position that I'd be interested to see if USC has Solomon work there at all, simply because he's just so lengthy. So lengthy. The last measurements that we had from him, 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. Lengthy defensive back. Hard-hitting defensive back at that. David says he was a nasty wide receiver. Yeah, really good wide receiver in high school. But I expect him to play defensive back. That's what we've been kind of told. Let's see what else we have. Touchdown TV says, how much improvement should we expect out of the offensive line this season? Knock on wood, but it starts with just being able to stay healthy. If they're able to do that, Touchdown TV, I truly believe the offensive line is going to make a big jump. And I know it's talking season. All we can do right now is talk. Nothing's going to get backed up until we're in the last week of August, week 1, where those 12 games in the fall. The reason why I believe they will be better this year, again, if they can stay healthy, is when you look at the experience and the talent, the proven talent, whether it be at South Carolina or whether it be at other schools, they have much more of it this year in comparison to last year. Lonnie Teasy talked about it. If anything that he learned from last season, it was just being able to cross-train players more. And I know it's easy to say right now, well, he should have done more of it. Yeah, no kidding. I'm sure he'd be the first one to tell you that. But also, no one expected that your starting left tackle would get injured in the spring game. Your starting right tackle would get injured one of the first 2 series of week 1. You need to have some other injuries mixed in there as well. And at that point, it doesn't matter how much talent you have on the offensive line. It's can those guys still play as a rapport, as one unit together? So I think being able to have a lot of that experience right now and being able to rep it in a way where you're able to have a guy like Vershawn Lee get reps at that center position. Maybe he's working on the right side of the line. Maybe he's working on the left side. And I'm just using Vershawn as an example. You can use a transfer for crying out loud, as an example. Torricelli Simpkins, getting some reps at center, getting some reps at guard, cross-training and being ready, God forbid, if an injury happens. Injuries are part of football. That's why you won't hear someone like Lonnie Teasley go out and use it as an excuse. But at the same time, too, he understands that they have to be better prepared for it because injuries are going to happen. You just pray that you don't have to deal with anything like you dealt with last year. Quantrell Knows says, do you think Marquis Anderson has a chance at right tackle, or is he strictly a guard? I think what it comes down to is simply what do they need him for, right? What do they need him for the most? I look back to last season, and we talked a lot about Nick Gargiulo and how Gargiulo reminded me to compare it to baseball like a utility player because he had the ability and the versatility to play multiple positions. That's why when you saw the injuries, he was moved from guard to center. And he also had experience going back to his days at Yale of playing left tackle. So that versatility allowed Nick to give South Carolina something that they desperately needed last year. Unfortunately, because of all the other injuries that happened, it didn't solve all the problems. But that's one of the reasons why Gargiulo was invited to the NFL Combine out in Indy, because of that versatility. I bring that up because with Marquis, to me, I would prefer him playing guard in a perfect world. But at the same time, too, number one, what does Marquis bring you that you feel most comfortable with? And sometimes that's not even just what Marquis' abilities are. It's okay, the guy left of him, or depending on if he's on, if he's on the right side of the line, the guy left of him, if he's on the left side, the guy right of him, and being able to play off that. So I think it's one of those questions where it's not just what can Marquis do, it's what are the other guys next to him, and they feel like, that combination, that rapport. But I think Marquis is one of those players that, unfortunately, it's going to, from a talking standpoint, he's going to get overlooked this spring. He's going to get overlooked this spring from a outsider standpoint. That doesn't mean he's getting overlooked in that building. There's a lot of talent that they brought in, and it's unfortunate that Marquis had to go through that injury last year. Because if people remember, Marquis Anderson was actually on the travel list that week 1 game against North Carolina. I mean, shoot, I got to go back and see if I can find it, because I'm like a mini hoarder when it comes to keeping programs and travel roster sheets. For whatever reason, I just hold on to everything. But Marquis, he was going to go to Charlotte. And then at the last minute, because of that injury, he was off the list. And then he dealt with the injury the entire year. So very interested to see what Marquis can do. Would love to see him out there and just move around that spring game, even though, again, it's tough to get like a true feel for an offensive lineman, simply because it's not just, okay, what's the offensive lineman doing? What's the guys next to him doing? So Marquis could go out there and it could look like he blew an assignment, but it might not be Marquis. It might be the guy next to him that blew the assignment. He was trying to make up for it. So that's something that I'm going to be paying attention on when we get closer to that spring game. All right, let's listen to Joe DeCamillis. Had a lot. We're trying to be able to answer a lot of these questions today. We'll keep things moving, though. But this is what Joey D had to say at the press conference.
First of all, just want to say what a privilege it's been here so far as just the way things have gone. Coach Beamer's done a great job of setting a culture, and I think our players have bought into it too. Our strength coach has done a great job of giving us the players the capacity to work, and they are not afraid of hard work. I can tell you that. So that's part of the biggest positive for me right now. That's for sure. And seeing this whole operation, the way it's worked. It's been a great experience so far.
Coach, just curious to hear your thoughts on how the place kicker battle has gone with Herrera and some of those other guys.
Yeah, unfortunately with Alex, he ended up getting a little bit of a heel injury right before we started. So he's been limited in quite a few practices early on. Ended up hitting some balls today, which was good to see. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for him so far. But the other guys, I'll tell you, Joyce has done a good job for us. Some of the guys that have been here in the past, we've had a good competition so far there, so it's good to see.
Speaking of that competition, Joe, you look at Mason Love, comes in with a lot of high school credentials, enlisted as a kicker and punter. Are you guys repping him at both? Do you like one spot better than the other?
Yeah, I think right now I would view him more as a kickoff man and a punter. That's how I view him right now. I'm not sure that, we want to put him in that position now to where he's a place kicker, but we'll see how it goes during the summer. We want to try to spoon feed him a little bit and get him going where he's positive right now. And he's had a really good spring so far as a punter and a kickoff man.
Joe, I had a chance to ask Shane this on Tuesday, but just from your perspective, obviously you're coming in here, you were hired to do a certain job, but at the same time too, from a player standpoint, trying to figure out different terminology, trying to figure out your philosophy on everything. How has that process been in trying to bring in what you want to do and blend that in with what they've been able to do the last couple of years?
Well, I think the biggest thing is it's them understanding what we want done, the way we want it done. My practice and my practice tempo and the things I'm asking them to do is going to be different than what Pete did. That's just how it is. But they are acclimating very well. They are doing a good job of doing that. It's been fun with these kids. Like I said, the biggest thing is their hard work will get us to where we need to be. If they can keep that attitude going, we're going to be in great shape with these kids. I think the way they work, and I'm very pleased with where we're at now. Am I pleased with everything that goes on in practice? Hell no, I'm not. But we just got to keep things going in the right direction.
I would imagine you have a lot of different guys working at kick and punt return. Assuming that's the case, who have been some of those guys that have gotten a lot of work there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys. Vicari's been one of the guys that's been back there on punt return. Gage has been back there on punt return. We've had Kilgore back there on punt return. Those are 3 guys. Kickoff return, all those same guys. Peyton Mangren's been back there on kickoff return. So right now, the way we're running things is we really don't have a scout team, if that makes sense. When you get to the season, it's a scout team. What we've done is we break it up into 4 teams, and the whole spring, they're going to be working on each team, if that makes sense to you. So that means they're getting just as much work on punt return, punt, kickoff, and kickoff return all the way through. And just the way we've done it. And I think it's been good. I think it creates good competition, and they're running our ball. They're not worried about scout team looks and all that kind of stuff. They're running our ball, which I think is important teaching wise.
How about the gunner spot? Now that's always kind of a moving target, but is there anybody you've worked at gunner right now that you kind of feel good about at this point?
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of different guys, right? Those same guys that I talked about, it'll be the DBs, the gunners, the DBs, safety guys, corners. We've got some receivers that have been out there. So, I mean, it's everybody really right now. I think right now they're where we need to be. We just got to keep going in the right direction.
I know this doesn't necessarily affect y'all this year, but the new kickoff rule in the NFL, there's maybe been some chatter out there that it could be coming to college at some point down the road. Just your general thoughts on what that looks like and what just kind of overall what it might.
Yeah.
Like.
Raheem came up here. Raheem Morris is the head coach at the Falcons, and he and I have worked together for a couple of years. And then, so he started quizzing me on it. I said, "Hey man, it's not my problem right now. You go ahead and take care of that." But I think if it works out, it could be something that we see down the road. I think the biggest challenge for those guys right now is going to be the personnel that's involved. Is that going to change? That's really, in the National Football League, one of the things that happens is you don't have all the players to choose from every week. So there's 48 guys that go to the game, and there's certain numbers that you always have. And I don't know if that's going to stay the same. That's going to be the biggest issue. But I think change is good if it keeps the play safe and it keeps the play in the game. Now in college, it's different. We've had more returns, and people are willing to return the ball more, and it's been a safer play. So hopefully we can keep it that way.
Joe, I don't know if anyone really care about this, but noticed during practice today, it looked like there were some edges or guys that may be up backs returning kickoffs. Is that just trying to be able to get them in a position to be prepared if there's a short kick or anything deeper into that? Just noticed that today at practice.
That's great on your part. That's the way to see it, man. Study it all the time, right? That's exactly what we were doing. We're catching pop-ups because, if you're back there as a tight end on kickoff return and the ball's popped up to you, you want to be able to catch the ball. And I haven't seen the film. How'd they do? I didn't see the film. What was it? Got a couple drops or what? Okay, good. So, but yeah, that's what we were doing. That's what we were doing so far.
All right, there you go. Joey D. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about with special teams. I know what I'm doing there. Do a little bit of it back in the day, but no. Look, DeCamillis, it's one of those things where Pete Lembo was so beloved in that special teams room by his players. And obviously, when you look at the resume of Joey D and what he's been able to accomplish in the NFL, a 2-time Super Bowl champion as a special teams coordinator, over 30 years of experience of coaching at that level, it speaks for itself. But at the same time, too, earning that trust from that room won't just happen because of what something says on a piece of paper. So I think more than anything, and it's not just from listening to what he just had to say, from talking to people close to the program and inside that building, players are quickly buying into what he is trying to do. And as we've said many times before, you go back, especially in those first 2 seasons of the Shane Beamer era, you don't win some of those games if you don't make big plays on special teams. I mean, just think back to 2 years ago against Clemson. You don't recover that punt. You don't force that fumble. If Nate Atkins doesn't do that, South Carolina might not win that game. They probably don't win that game because Clemson's going to get into field goal range. And there are multiple games. You can go back to first game of the Shane Beamer era back in 2021 against Eastern Illinois, and how offensively it just wasn't there, and how the special teams made a big difference. Blocked 2 punts that game. So special teams, as we know, has been very important to this program since Shane Beamer has arrived. Carolina Titans says, I'm interested to see what Mazio is becoming with all the talk about him. He's one of those players that, again, from talking to people close to the program and inside the building and seeing him every day, he's quickly picking things up at a rate that most freshmen don't. And I've said this before in the past, that when you watch his film, and I think back of one clip in particular, it was at the 7-on-7 tournament at South Carolina a year ago, but you can go and watch his tape from actual games. He's very polished. When he runs routes, he doesn't just do it for the sake of doing it because he's athletic and he can run fast. He can go jump high, and that's how he's going to create separation. Some high school players, they do that, and they're able to look like studs, but they don't really know the why. He understands the why. He understands what he's looking for when he's running a route. It's not just, okay, it's a post corner. You're going to make a cut here at 7 yards. You're going to do. No, he understands what he's looking for. He understands what he's trying to do to a defensive back, especially a corner, in trying to get them to open up their hips at a certain point and understanding what happens when you're able to do that, why he's doing that. So I think those little things can allow him to put himself in the conversation of competing for that top 6 spot, because that's what South Carolina's talked about in the past. They want to look for 6 receivers that they can count on week in and week out. And when we talk about freshmen, and I always say, let's simmer down a little bit, that's a room where there's a lot of unknowns. And when you talk about 6, it's not too crazy to believe that a true freshman like that could be competing for one of those spots. So certainly we understand there's a long way to go, but the updates that continue to come in, not just in front of the podium that we're hearing, but some of the stuff that myself, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, my colleagues, we continue to hear the same things, that things are heading in the right direction with Mazio. And that's what you're looking for, not just out of a true freshman, but from anyone in that room, in a room that has a lot of unknowns. Martin says, the game I went to, Mazio took the first play of the game to the house, talking about them Greenville days, Greenville High School. So, having said all that, we're at about the hour mark. Just took a peek up at the Masters. See what's going on here. Bryson DeChambeau having a good start. Try to give you guys the actual leader here, because I told you I'd give you some Masters updates. Ryan Fox atop the leaderboard at 5 under through 12. How about that? And then Bryson at 4 under. So I'm trying to hang in with my Masters pool. Where are we at? We're in 29th out of like 400, 500 people. So we'll see. Still too early, but good luck to anyone doing a Masters pool this weekend. Big Red asks, is Tiger playing in the Masters this year? Yes, he is. Hopefully Tiger's able to make the cut. I think certainly with everything that he's gone through with just his legs, and it's golf is better when Tiger's competing and in competition, number one, but I'd love to be able to see him get to that point where he's able to be in it towards the end, but I'm not going to hold my breath that'll happen this weekend, but hopefully he's able to make the cut and continues to make progress in the right direction. All right, folks, I think we're going to wrap things up. Didn't have a chance to get to the players today, but if you missed any of it yesterday, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page. You'll have all the players that spoke. There were 6 yesterday, a combination both offensive and defensive players. some new faces via the transfer portal. So if you want to listen to those players, not all players from the portal, Jalen Kilgore spoke yesterday. It was fun to listen to him. But if you want to go check those guys out, head on over there. If you want to listen to more of what Joe DeCamillis had to say or Shawn Elliott, head on over to that Gamecock Central YouTube page or head on over to Gamecock Central. We have a page for you. Kind of some cliff notes, a couple topics that they hit on. But we also have a link to that full press conference for each coach and each player. And Shane Beamer spoke on Tuesday. Maybe you want to go back a little bit further. In addition to that, if you want to listen to this show, maybe you came on a little bit later. It's okay. I understand the Masters is going on. Maybe you went out, got an ice cream cone, and the weather's starting to get nice in comparison to this morning. Head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page. Hit the little bell icon. Get notified anytime one of these GC live shows drop. You can also listen to us on the Gamecock Central Podcast Network, where you can also listen to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour on 107.5 The Game with Wes and Chris and Tyler Head. We have all those links up there as well. That is also free. I know people like free, so take advantage of that. If you want to pay, though, $1 can get you that first month of Gamecock Central. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. We have just over a week to go until the Garden and Black spring game under the lights, April 20th at 7 o'clock. Appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Enjoy your Masters weekend and enjoy the start of your weekend. We got one more day to go, but you get what I mean. I'm sure some people are going to call out of work tomorrow to watch the Masters. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.